Thank you, Rabbi Matalon, Chazan Privin, Rabbi Weintraub, and Felicia for inviting me to your bima. And Mazal Tov, B'nai Jesherin, on your bicentennial. Now that is an anniversary really worthy of celebration. And Mazal Tov BJ on making the wonderful and wise choice in naming Rabbi Saul as your next Rosh Kehillah. My dearest friend, my Chavruta for life, will with no doubt continue to lead this extraordinary congregation forward with her many strengths and her many smarts. Today is mostly about Sivan and how she is taking her place among her congregation and the Jewish people. And today's sanctuary, so full with family and friends, congregants and colleagues, is also an expression of kavod and admiration and gratitude for Felicia's rabbinic leadership, and that too is worthy of celebration. The University of Toronto's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy has recently won 3 professors from Yael. Professor of Philosophy Jason Stanley and historians Marcy Shore and Timothy Snyder. Why is this newsworthy? Why are these 3 scholars treated like pariahs or rock stars by the country they are leaving? Because their area of scholarship is totalitarianism. In 2017, Snyder wrote a little book entitled On Tyranny. I recently gave gift copies to our sons who are coming of age in this complicated world. Was that a good or a bad parenting decision? I don't know. But the last chapter of the book is called Be as Courageous as You Can. It begins with Snyder recalling the words of Hamlet, a virtuous hero who is rightly shocked by the abrupt rise of an evil ruler. Haunted by visions, overcome by nightmares, lonely and estranged, he is disoriented. Hamlet says, "The time is out of joint. O cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right." These are fearful times for us. Our time is out of joint. We find ourselves disoriented in the wilderness midbar. Parashat Beha'alotekha describes the wild life in the wilderness. The people are physically worn out by the journey, by infectious disease, by an unprovoked attack from an underestimated enemy, by tense factions from within, by the harsh climate and rocky terrain of the Midbar. They are emotionally depleted by lack of confidence in their leaders. They are spiritually fragile because of their own wavering faith in God. Distrust and dispiritedness are everywhere. Does it sound familiar? And then suddenly, our parsha provides a verse that pierces through the chaotic spiral like a straight arrow, like the clear call of a trumpet, ricocheting off the cliffs in the vast wilderness. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, Aseh lecha shtei chatzatzrot kesef. Make 2 trumpets of silver, make them of hammered work. They shall serve you to summon the Eidah, the congregation, and cause the machanot, the camps, to journey onward. This verse, easily overlooked, gave rise to Soloveitchik's important distinction between camp and congregation. In his most influential teaching, Kol Dodi Dofek, Hark, My Beloved Knocks, Soloveitchik points out a pattern in Torah. When the Israelites are confronted with one threat or another, they are described as a machaneh, a camp. Camps are formed from fear. Camps are formed in response to a threat imposed from the outside. I stood in a camp just a few weeks ago in Toronto. 56,000 Jews and allies gathered to walk with Israel through the streets of Toronto. Escorted by police and protesters, we felt the power and protection of coming together as a machaneh, as a camp. But Soloveitchik reveals another pattern of Torah, that whenever Israelites are called to a lofty purpose, like receiving Torah at Sinai, they are described not as a machaneh, but rather as an edah, not as a camp, but rather as a congregation. While camps are created reactively, congregations are formed proactively. While camps are created by external threats, congregations are formed from an internal sense of mission. While camps are created from fear, congregations emerge from faith. Both have their time and place. Camps are necessary for survival. Camps are how we have been getting by since October 7th. Jews in Israel and throughout the diaspora have instinctively found one another, united in defense of one another, protecting one another in the most dramatic and moving of ways, because the fears we fear today are real. Remember the good old days when we would reassure one another that it was just our inherited generational trauma talking? No, today it is all too clear that our fears are founded. The threat of a nuclear Iran is real. The threat of her terrorist proxies is real. The threat of violent anti-Semitism is real. The threat of crumbling democracies here, there, and everywhere is real. When first forming machanot in the early days of organizing ourselves into camps, no one says, "Don't be afraid," because fear drives the camp. Instead, in early days, we say to one another, "Do the hard thing, even though you are afraid." We say to one another, "I believe in you. I have faith that you can be courageous, that you can do the hard thing despite your fears." We say to one another, "With you at my side, fear will not paralyze me. It will motivate me. Shoulder to shoulder, we can advance." As Hamlet in the end concludes, "Nay, come, let's go together." As Parashat Beha'alotekha insists, "Ulamasa et hamachanot," cause the camps to journey on. That's exactly where we are right now, or at least most of us. But we cannot stay here forever. A camp must not remain a camp forever. God asks for more. God demands, God insists, God expects that we will move from fear to faith. God commands us to turn our camp into a congregation. How so? By clinging to the most often repeated mitzvah in the Tanakh, not in the Torah, but in the Tanakh, in the whole of the Hebrew Bible. What is the most often repeated mitzvah? Al tira'u. Thou shalt not be afraid. At least 122 times we are commanded, "Fear not." It is repeated so often in the Hebrew Bible that some scholars take it to be a common expression of reassurance. But in his 12th century code of Jewish law, Maimonides insists that Al Tirah is, in fact, one of the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. What does it mean? How can we fulfill it? We can look to others before us for role models. When Avram sets out into uncharted territory as the first to enter into a personal covenant with God, he is told, "Al tirah." God promises Avram more than protection, but also progeny, more than present, but also future. When Hagar was about to give into her loneliness and despair, an angel of God calls out, "Al tir'i," do not fear, and rescues her Ishmael, her future, from a deadly thirst. When Isaac sets out from the security of his own home and does not know where the road might lead, God says, "Al tirah," and reasserts the blessings promised to his father before him. And when the elderly Jacob prepares for his journey down to Egypt to be reunited with his son Joseph, after 20 years of separation, God encourages him, "Al tirah," do not fear. The biblical call to courage is not only given in the singular, but also in the plural, to our people as a collective. At the shores of the Red Sea, as Pharaoh's army of horses and chariots were advancing, Moses called out, Al tira'u, have no fear. And when Joshua prepared the Israelites for the battle at Jericho, Al tira'u, be not afraid, chizku v'imtzu, be strong and of good courage. This command comes at a time when we need self-defense. It comes to reassure us that this is not how the story ends. This is not where our story ends. It reminds us that we are to be more than a camp when a camp is necessary, that we are on our way to becoming a congregation. We are more than the real and present danger. This mitzvah, always bound up with the future, insists, don't fear this moment because it is only a moment. You, eternal people, bound to the eternal God through an eternal covenant, don't fear this moment because your yet unborn great-grandchildren need you now. Advance. In every generation from Ruth to David to Daniel, so many of our biblical ancestors heard the call, Al Tirah, when they felt most vulnerable, most alone, most self-doubting. Just as our prophets heard and delivered this constant message, I pray that our family and dear ones in shelters and safe rooms at this very hour can hear the calm confidence in these words. I pray that our sisters and brothers on the front lines of Operation Roaring Lion can hear the call to courage in these words. I pray that our hostages, held in dark tunnels underground, can still hear these words whispered in their ears by the Holy One. Al tirah, ki imcha ani. Fear not, for I am with you. Al tishcha ki ani Elohecha. Be not frightened, for I am your God. I strengthen you, I help you, I hold you up with my right hand of justice. And yes, because we can be expansive in our prayers, we must never be limited in our prayers. I also pray that any and all innocents who are caught in the crossfires can hear these words too, Al Tira'u. What does this constant repetition of this mitzvah say about our giants of faith? They who were biblical visionaries and dreamers, they had fears too. And what does the repetition of this commandment say about our God? That as big as our fears may be, God is bigger still, because the Eternal One is eternity. God can contain our fears and absorb the shock of them until we feel ourselves strong enough to advance again. A congregation is formed by knowing there is a greater mission, a sacred task before us. The camp is about survival for the sake of survival, for outmaneuvering our enemies in order to live another day. But an Eidah, a congregation, is, in the words of my predecessor, Rabbi Dov Marmer of blessed memory, beyond survival. He, a child survivor of the Shoah, who lived by fleeing to places like Siberia and Uzbekistan, wrote in his book, Beyond Survival, ultimately, Judaism cannot exist, let alone survive, under the motto, what is good enough for my parents is good enough for me. Instead, it must evolve towards a formula that says only what is good enough for my children is good enough for me. Life for the Jews in camp formation is always lived in the present tense, only and always in the moment. Life for the Jewish people in a congregation formation is future-facing. It is imaginative, it is creative, it is fearless in its capacity to dream, even to prophesy. It's nearly impossible to tap into the realm of spiritual imagination when we are so necessarily attending to the here and now, but we have to try. That is who we have always been charged to become. Good people, as my grandfather used to address his own congregation, good people, While we form our camps as we must, let us also strive to become a congregation. Let us remind one another that we are descendants of dreamers. We are the descendants of generations known worldwide for our creativity and our contributions to humanity. We are the descendants of those who stood at the foot of the mountain. As Sivan, our bat mitzvah, stands today to take the words of Torah into her mouth and take up these deeds of Torah into her own hands. This is when we catch glimpses of what it is to be an Edah, to be witness and to bear witness. The pages of our history are filled with the individual Jews and the entire communities, which were physically threatened but walked through life with their heads held high because they knew God's nearness, because they had faith in the Holy One. Adonai tzvaot ashrei adam boteach bach. Contented is the one who has faith in you, O God. Yom ira ani elecha evtach. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. And this is no simple faith. It never was. Our ancestors did not survive because they put their fate only into God's hands. No, the psalmist instructs us, B'tach b'Adonai v'aseh tov. Put your faith in the eternal God and do good. That is, faith in God, that there is a future worth living for, that there is a future worth working for. Active faith is this partnership of wills. God will look after the big picture and the long run and the eternity that we will never know and can only begin to imagine, while we do what we must in the here and now. We can do our part because we believe God will do God's part. We believe there is a larger plan. In the words of Soloveitchik, a greater destiny for the Jewish people, a greater vision for all of humanity. And we can inch the universe in its direction. I see how worried we are. I feel it too. I know how faiths of all kinds have eroded, faith in our cities, faith in our elected officials, faith in the press to tell whole truths, not half-truths, and never lies. Faith in our teachers and institutions of higher learning, faith in our neighbors and co-workers, all shaken and shattered. And beyond these external breaks and betrayals, many wonder if we can have faith in the future. I've come today to tell you that this is forbidden. It is even sinful. To doubt ourselves in this way is unnecessary and it is ineffectual. Moreover, it is exactly what the haters want. They want to terrify and terrorize, and we must not give them that satisfaction. What they want to see of our camp is what's typical of most camps, that it will disintegrate altogether, as most camps do. But our camp can become an Edah. Our camp can elevate itself to the level of holiness, as it is written, the eternal your God walks amidst your camp, b'kerev machanecha, v'haya machanecha kadosh. God walks among us to rescue us, to give our enemies before us, so that our camp may become holy. Now, I asked Sivan what she wanted as a gift, a Kiddush cup or a yad. And she said, well, I think I would use a yad more often, which means you're going to be reading Torah more than once a week. Sivan, that little silver yad in your hand will point the way. And through you, and through your deeds of Torah and mitzvot, you will help to transform our camp into a congregation. You will help to move our people once again from fear to faith. So al tiri, don't be afraid. We are with you. I'll conclude with a prayer for this moment, for the camp that can become the congregation we seek. Shomer Yisrael, Shemor Sharit Yisrael. Guardian of the people of Israel, watch over and protect the remnant of our people Israel. Hoshi'enu, save us, O God of Israel, from all the evils of this world. Ve'al yovad Yisrael ha'omrim Shema Yisrael. God, Israel will not be lost, for we are the ones who say Shema Yisrael. Ki el shomea tefillah v'tachanunim ata. You are the one who hears our prayers and our supplications. You are the one who calls us to become a sacred congregation, united for a sacred purpose. Amen.